applause. That's all there was. Hundreds of hands clapping in unison, proud parents standing for photos, camera flashes bouncing off polished floors. Balloons floated near the ceiling. Teachers beamed. Someone shouted, "You did it!" and the gym roared again. And then nothing. Silence, as if someone pulled the volume from the room with a single glance. She was sitting in the fourth row, 2 seats from the aisle, light blue dress, hair pinned too neatly for it to be casual, hands clasped, wedding ring gone. When our son's name was called, she stood, smiled, clapped with just the right amount of maternal pride. But then I stepped into the aisle. She didn't smile then. No one else noticed, but I did. Her expression didn't just change. It fractured like glass beneath pressure. Her jaw locked, shoulders stiffened, and her hand, the one that had just been clapping, gripped the edge of her seat like she was bracing for something violent. For years, that's how long it had been. Not a word, not a message, not even a forwarded email about Ezra's grades, her birthdays, or allergies. She had erased me like you delete a number after a bad night out. But I had waited. I had bled silently in a town where no one knew my name. Listened to voicemail recordings of my son from years ago, just to remember what his voice used to sound like. And now here I was. Not for her. Not even for me. But because of the envelope I found wedged under my door last Tuesday. No return address. No explanation. Just a short handwritten note in black ink. If you still care, be at the ceremony. I was never sure if it was from him or someone else entirely. But the second I stepped into that auditorium and saw her freeze, I knew one thing. She hadn't told him the whole truth, and now that I was back, she wouldn't be able to hide it much longer. She didn't look away, not at first. Her eyes flicked down my body like she was assessing a threat, like I was an uninvited guest in a dream she thought was over. But she didn't say anything, didn't move. Her son, our son, was still on stage, grinning, shaking hands, laughing in that quiet, confident way he always had when he was little. I almost smiled. Almost. But then I saw him sitting beside her. He stood when Ezra walked past, applauded, even wiped a fake tear from the corner of his eye like a man proud of a son he didn't raise. And on his wrist was my watch. Not just any watch, a gift. What I received for 10 years of service from a company that laid me off 2 months later without warning. The band was scratched. The glass had a chip on the corner. And yet somehow it was now on the wrist of a man seated beside my ex-wife. Laughing, beaming, wearing my memories like they belonged to him. I stepped back just slightly. Something in my chest burned. Not rage, not sadness. Something worse. Something hollow. Lainey. She hadn't told him I was coming, that much was clear. He leaned over, whispered something to her, and she didn't answer. Just kept her eyes on me like I was a disease she thought had been cured long ago, now standing there in remission. After the ceremony, family swarmed the stage, cameras flashed. Ezra was surrounded. I didn't move. I waited, 1 foot behind the other, hands in my pockets, pulled steady, watching, letting it all settle. And then he saw me, not Lainey, Ezra. His smile paused just slightly, like a glitch in a video. His classmates moved past him, but he stood still, cap in one hand, phone in the other. Our eyes locked. I nodded. He didn't nod back, but he didn't look away either. That was enough for now. I turned to leave, not out of fear, but because I didn't want her to be in control of this moment. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of a confrontation on her terms. Not in front of Ezra. Not yet. But I only made it halfway to the parking lot when I heard quick footsteps behind me. Not hers. His, the man with my watch. "Hey," he called. Just loud enough to be aggressive, just quiet enough to avoid attention. I turned. His face was flushed. "Who the hell are you?" He asked like he already knew the answer but needed to perform the role of protector. I almost laughed. "I'm the man who bought you that watch," I said quietly. He didn't get it. Not yet. But Laney must have told him something because his mouth opened like he had a follow-up, then closed again. His fist clenched. "She told me you left," he said after a beat. "That you just disappeared. That you didn't want anything to do with your family." "Did she also tell you why?" I asked. He blinked, then suddenly unsure, stepped back. I wasn't angry, just tired. For years of silence had taught me how to carry pain quietly, but now it was time for her to speak. And whether she was ready or not, I was going to make sure that Ezra knew why I vanished and who rewrote the story in my absence. Next time, it wouldn't be him who came running after me. It would be her. And this time, she'd be the one who couldn't look away. The parking lot was almost empty by the time I unlocked my rental. The sun had started to dip behind the auditorium, casting long shadows over cracked asphalt. I didn't turn around when I heard her heels behind me. I just waited. The door was half open when her voice finally broke the silence. "You weren't supposed to be here." She said it like I'd crashed a wedding, like this was her moment and I'd violated something sacred. I turned slowly, met her eyes. That same bitterness I remembered, tied around her lips, eyes narrowed, not from confusion, but calculation. I used to mistake that look for stress. I used to think it meant she needed help, comfort, patience. Now I knew better. It meant she was losing control. "I didn't come for you," I said simply. She crossed her arms, tilted her head slightly. "Then what? Closure? Drama?" "I came because Ezra invited me." Her mask slipped for just a second. "No, he didn't." I pulled the envelope from my jacket pocket and tossed it onto the hood of the car. "This says otherwise." She didn't pick it up. She didn't even look at it. Instead, she walked around to the front of the car and leaned on the hood right beside the letter like we were just two old friends catching up. I hated how calm she looked. Perfectly ironed dress, nails done, like she'd spent the last 4 years sipping wine and telling people I'd run off in the middle of a breakdown. "You don't get to just walk back into his life," she said. "Neither do you," I replied. "Not after what you did." She didn't flinch, just smiled, cruel and small. "I didn't cheat, Ron." "Right." I nodded. "That's why your new husband is wearing my watch." "He's not my husband." That threw me. She said it like it meant something, like it justified everything. I let the silence hang for a moment, then asked the question that had burned a hole in my chest since the ceremony. "Did you tell him?" "Tell who?" "What?" she said too quickly. "Ezra, did you tell him the truth about why I left?" Her eyes flicked down just for a second, a flicker, a pause. "I told him enough," she muttered. "Enough to hate me?" I asked. "Enough to believe I abandoned him for no reason. He needed stability. You weren't stable." There it was, the lie polished and rebranded, made just soft enough to sound believable to a teenager, just sharp enough to cut me cleanly out of the picture. "You made him believe I chose to disappear," I said. "Quieter now. You painted me as a coward, or worse, apathetic. But you and I both know I didn't leave because I stopped caring. I left because you stopped pretending." That did it. Her face shifted. Not quite anger. Something more dangerous. The truth had finally scratched through her glass and she wasn't prepared for the mess behind it. "I protected him," she said through clenched teeth. "No," I said, stepping closer. You protected yourself. You didn't want him to see who you really were when the mask came off. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I didn't wait. I got into the car and closed the door gently, not slamming, not storming off, just leaving on my terms this time. As I pulled away, I looked in the mirror. She was still standing there beside the envelope, still frozen. But when I turned the corner, I saw something in the rear view that surprised me. Ezra. He was standing just outside the school doors, watching her, watching me. And for the first time in years, I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen since he was a child. Doubt. It wasn't much, but it was a crack, and I intended to widen it. I didn't sleep that night. The hotel room was too cold, the walls too thin, and my thoughts too loud. I lay there in the dark, replaying everything. Her face is silence, the weight of 4 years folded into a few uneasy stares. At 2:13 a.m., my phone buzzed. I didn't expect anything, probably spam. But when I saw the name, I sat up so fast I nearly dropped the phone. Ezra. Just one message. Meet me tomorrow. Back steps of the school, 5 p.m. Don't tell her. I read it 3 times. It didn't feel real. The last time he texted me, he was 13. Back then, he still sent me memes and asked for video game codes. Now he was graduating high school and talking like a man in a spy movie. Don't tell her. Why would he say that unless something had already started to shift? I didn't reply. I didn't want to scare him off. Just showing up would be enough. The next day crawled. I walked through the old part of town, tried to lose myself in bookstores and diners, but nothing felt right. Every face reminded me of a life I wasn't part of anymore. Every corner reminded me of the quiet eraser she'd pulled off with surgical precision. By 4:30, I was parked down the block from the school. I didn't want to arrive too early, didn't want to seem desperate. But let's be honest, I was pathetic. Even who waits outside a high school hoping their kid hasn't completely forgotten them. I felt ridiculous. But at 5:01 he came. Same hoodie from yesterday. Hair still too long, taller than I remembered, and more tired than an 18-year-old should ever look. He didn't wave, just sat down on the steps, looked at the grass, and waited for me to join him. I did. Neither of us spoke for almost a full minute. It wasn't silence. It was pressure. Thick, quiet, real. Then he said, "You still drink root beer?" I blinked. "Yeah." He reached into his backpack and tossed me a can. I caught it. That stupid little gesture hit me harder than any punch she ever threw with her lies. It meant he remembered something simple, something mine. "I don't know why I texted you," he muttered. "She told me not to." That line scratched through the air like a dull blade. "What else has she told you?" I asked. He shrugged. "That you left, that you got overwhelmed, that you didn't love us enough to stay." I felt my throat tighten. "Do you believe that?" He stared ahead. The sky was turning gold behind the trees. I did, and now he looked down at his hands, which were fidgeting with the zipper of his hoodie. "She said you yelled at her, that you used to throw things, that you were paranoid." "I never touched her," I said quickly. "I know." He said, "That's the thing. I don't even remember you ever yelling. You just stopped talking." I was trying not to scream. We sat there, letting the truth crawl back into the space between us. Then he said something that chilled me more than anything I'd heard in years. "She cries in the bathroom sometimes, but she locks the door and turns the faucet on like I can't hear her." I didn't know what to say. "She told her boyfriend you were dangerous," he added, "but I think she's afraid of what happens if I start asking too many questions." You're not a kid anymore. I said, no, he said. I'm not. But she still talks to me like I'm 8. The can in my hand felt heavier than before. Ezra wasn't asking for me to fix it. He just wanted to know that he wasn't insane for feeling that things didn't add up. And I realized something in that moment. She hadn't just stolen 4 years of my presence. She had poisoned every remaining connection between us with half-truths, edits, and omission. But the cracks were forming, and if I could just be patient enough, Ezra would walk through them on his own. Still, I wasn't prepared for what he said next. I found a letter, he whispered in the attic. It had your handwriting. I froze. What letter? It had no stamp. She never mailed it. You wrote about everything. About her and that guy. About why you left. It was dated 2 days after you moved out. My heart thudded. I remembered that letter. I'd left it on the kitchen counter the night I drove away. She told me it was trash, he said quietly. But I kept it. I didn't move. I couldn't. Ezra stood up, zipped his bag. Then he looked down at me and said something I'll never forget. I don't know what she's hiding, but I think I want to find out. Then he walked away and I sat there on those steps with a warm can of root beer and a heartbeat that finally dared to hope. 2 days passed. No messages, no late-night texts, not even a hey. I told myself it was okay, that he needed time, that maybe talking to me had lit a fuse, and now he was quietly watching it burn down. Or maybe I was fooling myself. Maybe Ezra was like a ship that passed by once and disappeared again into the fog, leaving me with nothing but the sound of the waves. But then, something strange happened. At 6:43 p.m. on a Thursday, while I was eating dinner at a rundown seafood place near the marina, my phone buzzed. The message was from a number I didn't recognize. You don't know me, but I used to work with your wife, or ex-wife, I guess. Can we talk? For a full minute, I stared at the screen without blinking. I read it again, then again. I wrote back 2 words. Who are you? The response came fast. Melanie, I was Lainey's office manager 5 years ago. Melanie. The name stirred something. She was the older woman Lainey used to call a sweet fossil. I only met her twice. The last time she brought over a pecan pie for Thanksgiving and told Ezra to stay curious, because curious kids grow into sharp adults. I texted back. We agreed to meet the next morning at a coffee shop off the freeway. She said she didn't want to be seen in town. Said people still talk. When I got there, she was already waiting. Same silver curls, same piercing gray eyes. Except now there was something different behind them. Tension, urgency, like she'd been holding her breath for years and was finally ready to exhale. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. I didn't waste time. Why now? She looked around, leaned in. Because Ezra showed up at my house yesterday. That caught me off guard. What? He asked questions about what happened about her, and I couldn't lie to him. I told him everything I saw back then, everything I never said out loud. What did you see? She hesitated, then her voice lowered into something that chilled me. I saw your wife with her boss, repeatedly behind closed doors. After hours, I saw her pull Ezra out of school early just to take him to meetings where she could keep him out of your way. I saw her rewrite the story long before you ever left. I tried to breathe evenly, tried to keep my face still. She lied to the company about why you stopped coming around. Said you were emotionally unstable. Said you were controlling. Everyone believed her. She was charming when she wanted to be. Melanie looked down at her coffee, but I never did. I always knew there was something else going on. I just didn't know who to tell. My throat was dry. Why tell me now? She met my eyes. Because Ezra deserves the truth. And because I kept something. She reached into her purse and pulled out a worn manila folder, yellowed edges a little bit. She slid it across the table. What is this? I asked. Printouts, internal memos, screenshots, copies of her calendar entries, times and dates. She claimed to be working late when she wasn't even in the building. It's not perfect, but it shows a pattern, and patterns don't lie. I opened the folder. Inside were over a dozen documents, some marked confidential, others highlighted. One even had a post-it note with my name on it. She used your name, Melanie whispered, to cover meetings. She clocked out under your ID in the system. That's fraud, technically. I stared at the pile. All this time, I thought the worst part was the betrayal, the affair, the lies to Ezra. But this was something else. She hadn't just erased me from their lives. She weaponized me. She'd turned me into a cover story, a scapegoat, a fabricated shell she could parade around when it suited her and discard when it didn't. Melanie leaned back. She didn't expect you to come back. And she definitely didn't expect Ezra to start asking Rio questions. I closed the folder slowly. If she finds out I have this, she won't hear it from me, Melanie said firmly. But she'll hear it from someone soon. Ezra is not done digging. He's smart and now he knows where to look. I didn't know whether to feel hopeful or terrified. As I left the cafe folder under my arm, I saw a group of high schoolers walking by. Ezra wasn't among them, but I knew he was close. Somewhere in this mess he was waking up. And once he did, she'd have no walls left to hide behind. It was just after 9 p.m. when Ezra knocked on my hotel door. No message, no warning, just a soft knock like someone afraid to be heard. When I opened the door, he stood there, hood up, phone in hand. I started behind him like he was being followed. He didn't say hi, didn't smile. He walked in and closed the door behind him with both hands. She doesn't know I'm here, he said flatly. I nodded, stepping aside. You hungry? No. Thirsty? No. He stood in the middle of the room like someone waiting for a verdict. I read the letter again, he said. The one you left for her? The one she never mailed. I sat down and she burned the rest. That caught me off guard. What do you mean? Ezra reached into his hoodie and pulled out a plastic sandwich bag. Inside were charred corners of paper, some barely legible, some completely gone. I found them in the fire pit behind the house. She tried to destroy them before I got home from school. I stared at the bag. This wasn't just paranoia anymore. This was cover-up. She said they were old bills, but I saw my name on one of them, then yours. I waited until she left to visit a friend and pulled out the ashes. There were 6 different letters. I couldn't speak. Not yet. Not with the way his voice was shaking. I think she's been planning this for a while. Not just lying about you, but curating the narrative, making sure it stays clean. Ezra began to pace. You know what else I found? She set up a new trust fund under his name. Not mine, not yours. Him. That guy with the smug laugh and your goddamn watch. Do you have proof? Ezra pulled up his phone. Photos of documents spread on a desk. A laptop screen showing a folder labeled Private with subfolders marked Taxes, Medical, and Audio. The last one was empty. I asked carefully. You went into her computer. You didn't blink. She's been spying on you. I found your name in her search history last week. She's been checking public records, looking at background checks. I think she thought you'd disappear for good, and now she's panicking. Why are you telling me this? I asked softly. Ezra stopped pacing. because I want to catch her saying it. I want to record her admitting what she did. I sat back. That's dangerous, Ezra. She lies every time I ask her anything, and I can't trust her anymore. But she doesn't lie the same when she thinks you're gone. I want her to admit what happened, what she told people, why she destroyed those letters. You think she'll just confess? No, he said, but she talks to her boyfriend like nobody's listening. Sometimes in the kitchen, sometimes in the car. He hesitated. I've been recording audio for a few days. I have some weird stuff. Nothing solid yet, but enough to scare her. That was when the weight of it really hit me. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was a teenager trying to unravel the mind of his own mother. Not with therapy, not with conversation, but with strategy. Covert tactics. Like a kid raised by someone too rehearsed to ever show guilt. And somehow, I was now an accomplice in his mission. What do you want me to do? I asked. I want you to help me go through the recordings. He sat down beside me, pulled out a small black recorder, something he must have borrowed from the school AV room, and pressed play. What came next made my stomach twist. Recording one kitchen Tuesday evening. Lanny's voice. He's going to come back eventually. He always did. But it won't matter. He has no legal grounds. He signed away everything. Another voice. The boyfriend's. You sure the kid won't flip on you? Laney. He's too soft. He wants to believe in people just like his dad. Ezra pressed pause. She was wrong. He said, barely above a whisper, I don't believe in her anymore. I didn't know what to say. I just looked at him. A boy turned into a detective because the woman who raised him couldn't stop rewriting the truth. You think I'm going too far? He asked. No, I said. I think you're already too deep to turn back. He nodded, eyes heavy with something older than he was. I'll send you the rest, he said. There's more. You need to hear it. Then, just before he left, he turned and added one last thing. She doesn't know yet, but I'm applying to colleges in other states. I'm not staying here. I didn't try to stop him. I just watched him walk down the hallway of that rundown hotel. Shadows stretched behind him, carrying proof of things no kid should ever have to carry. And as I shut the door, I realized something. This wasn't just my story anymore. This was our unraveling. And Laney had no idea how close her house of cards was to collapse. I knew something was wrong the moment I heard the knock on my door. It was sharp, aggressive. 3 hits, then silence. I opened it expecting Ezra. It was her. Laney stood in the hallway, hair undone, cheeks flushed, and eyes wild with something I hadn't seen in years. Fear. Not sadness, not rage. Fear. The kind that comes when your mask is slipped and you're not sure who saw what. You put him up to it, didn't you? She spat, stepping inside without being invited. I stayed calm. But who up to what? She tossed something on the bed. I didn't even have to look. It was the recorder. He left it in the kitchen drawer. I played it by accident. Or maybe he wanted me to find it. I don't know, but he recorded me. Ron, our son, recorded me. Do you understand what that means? I didn't flinch. It means he doesn't trust you. She let out a breath that sounded like a bark. You think this is noble? Teaching him to spy? What kind of father are you? I stepped forward slowly, never raising my voice. The kind who lets his son draw his own conclusions. The kind who doesn't feed him fairy tales and burn letters in the backyard. Her mouth twitched. You don't know what it's been like raising him alone. Explaining your absence, pretending like I wasn't drowning while trying to keep it all together. You weren't alone, I said. You just made sure I couldn't be part of it. She looked away. Do you even remember what you said about me at your job? I asked what Melanie overheard. Lainey's eyes flicked back to mine. You're talking to Melanie now. She kept records of everything. The schedules, the fake login, the lies. She didn't believe you then, and now Ezra doesn't either. Lainey sat down on the edge of the bed like her legs had given out. She looked smaller now. Not fragile, just exposed. Like the shell had finally cracked, and there was nothing left to prop up the story she'd told herself for years. I didn't mean to lose him, she whispered. You didn't lose him, I said. You just couldn't keep him in the dark forever. She pressed her hands to her face. He won't even look at me because he sees you now. The room fell into silence. Not the kind that comforts, but the kind that stiffens every breath. I could feel the history between us clinging to the walls like smoke. All the mornings I made her coffee, all the nights I stayed awake wondering if she'd come back from work, all the birthdays with her boyfriend lurking just outside the frame. You don't know how much I hated you, she finally said, voice muffled behind her hands. After you left, after you said nothing, you left me with a mess and disappeared. I sat across from her. You left me first. You just stayed in the house while you did it. For the first time, she didn't argue, and then the most unexpected thing happened. She cried. Not loud, not performative, just quiet. Broken tears sliding down her face as if the years had finally caught up. And there was nowhere left to store them. But I didn't comfort her. I couldn't because I remembered the night I stood in the kitchen holding that unopened bottle of wine she had saved for him, not me. I remembered how I begged her to look me in the eyes and just say it. Just tell me there was someone else. And how instead she smiled and said, You're imagining things again. That lie had been like acid in my lungs. And now here she was crying in front of me like it changed the past. I'm not here for revenge, I said finally. I came because Ezra invited me. I stayed because he needed to see the full picture. She wiped her face with her sleeve, then looked at me with a new kind of hollowness. He's all I have left. Then maybe it's time you start treating him like a person, not a possession. She stood, straightened her blouse, picked up the recorder and held it for a second, as if unsure whether to smash it or keep it. Then she turned to the door. I'm not the villain you think I am. I think, I said, you don't know who you are anymore without someone to lie to. And with that, she left. But something told me this wasn't over. People like Lainey don't collapse quietly. They try to pull you down with them. I knew something was wrong the moment I heard the knock on my door. It was sharp, aggressive. 3 hits, then silence. I opened it expecting Ezra. It was her. Lainey stood in the hallway, hair undone, cheeks flushed, and eyes wild with something I hadn't seen in years. Fear. Not sadness, not rage. Fear. The kind that comes when your mask is slipped and you're not sure who saw what. You put him up to it, didn't you? She spat, stepping inside without being invited. I stayed calm. But who? Up to what? She tossed something on the bed. I didn't even have to look. It was the recorder. He left it in the kitchen drawer. I played it by accident. Or maybe he wanted me to find it, I don't know. But he recorded me. Ron, our son, recorded me. Do you understand what that means? I didn't flinch. It means he doesn't trust you. She let out a breath that sounded like a bark. You think this is noble? Teaching him to spy? What kind of father are you? I stepped forward slowly, never raising my voice. The kind who lets his son draw his own conclusions. The kind who doesn't feed him fairy tales and burn letters in the backyard. Her mouth twitched. You don't know what it's been like raising him alone. Explaining your absence. Pretending like I wasn't drowning while trying to keep it all together. You weren't alone, I said. You just made sure I couldn't be part of it. She looked away. Do you even remember what you said about me at your job? I asked. What Melanie overheard? Lanny's eyes flicked back to mine. You're talking to Melanie now. She kept records of everything. The schedules, the fake login, the lies. She didn't believe you then, and now Ezra doesn't either. Lainey sat down on the edge of the bed like her legs had given out. She looked smaller now, not fragile, just exposed, like the shell had finally cracked, and there was nothing left to prop up the story she'd told herself for years. I didn't mean to lose him, she whispered. You didn't lose him, I said. You just couldn't keep him in the dark forever. She pressed her hands to her face. He won't even look at me because he sees you now. The room fell into silence. Not the kind that comforts, but the kind that stiffens every breath. I could feel the history between us clinging to the walls like smoke. All the mornings I made her coffee. All the nights I stayed awake wondering if she'd come back from work. All the birthdays with her boyfriend lurking just outside the frame. You don't know how much I hated you, she finally said, voice muffled behind her hands. After you left, after you said nothing, you left me with a mess and disappeared. I sat across from her. You left me first. You just stayed in the house while you did it. For the first time, she didn't argue. And then the most unexpected thing happened. She cried. Not loud, not performative, just quiet, broken tears sliding down her face, as if the years had finally caught up, and there was nowhere left to store them. But I didn't comfort her. I couldn't. Because I remembered the night I stood in the kitchen holding that unopened bottle of wine she had saved. For him, not me. I remembered how I begged her to look me in the eyes and just say it. Just tell me there was someone else. And how instead she smiled and said, You're imagining things again. That lie had been like acid in my lungs. And now here she was crying in front of me like it changed the past. I'm not here for revenge, I said finally. I came because Ezra invited me. I stayed because he needed to see the full picture. She wiped her face with her sleeve, then looked at me with a new kind of hollowness. He's all I have left. Then maybe it's time you start treating him like a person, not a possession. She stood, straightened her blouse, picked up the recorder, and held it for a second, as if unsure whether to smash it or keep it. Then she turned to the door. I'm not the villain you think I am. I think, I said. You don't know who you are anymore without someone to lie to. And with that, she left. But something told me this wasn't over. People like Lainey don't collapse quietly. They try to pull you down with them. A week after Lainey stormed out of my hotel room, I stood in the exact same spot. Except this time, the knock on the door was softer, familiar, unafraid. Ezra. He didn't look like someone who had just broken away from years of confusion. He looked calm, certain, like a puzzle he'd carried inside for years had finally been put together, and he could finally exhale. I moved out, he said plainly. I blinked. What? I packed a bag, told her I needed space. Told her I wasn't angry, just tired of pretending. I stepped aside and let him in. He dropped his backpack onto the floor and sat on the edge of the bed like he'd done it 1,000 times before. There was no tension between us, no awkward pauses, just the kind of quiet that feels earned. She said a lot of things after you left, he said. Some of them she probably believed. Most of them were meant to protect her story, but she didn't deny anything this time. I sat across from him. What did she say? that she was afraid that once the truth came out, she wouldn't know how to rebuild anything, that all she ever did was survive, but that doesn't excuse what she did to you or to me. We sat for a long time, letting the weight of it settle. No need to rehash everything. We both knew where the bodies were buried. Then Ezra said something that caught me off guard. I got into 3 schools. One of them's in Colorado. That's amazing, I said. He smiled, then looked at me differently. I'd like to move in with you until fall if that's okay. I wasn't ready for the way that sentence hit me. I didn't say yes. I just got up, walked across the room, and hugged him hard. He didn't pull away. He didn't say a word. That night we ate cheap burgers and watched reruns of shows we used to like when he was a kid. We talked about everything except her. We made plans. He asked me if I still played guitar. I told him I hadn't touched it since the night I left. He said we should change that. The next morning we went for a walk before sunrise. The streets were quiet. The sky was painted in streaks of soft pink and gold. And as we stood near the edge of the pier, hands in our pockets, both of us leaning on the railing, Ezra said, "She looked so small when I left." I felt bad for a second. "That's okay," I said. "You're human, but I don't regret it. I think sometimes people need to see what silence really feels like before they understand what they lost." I nodded, letting his words settle like the morning light over the water. "You know," he added, "you didn't really disappear, Dad. You just waited." I smiled at that, not because it made everything better, but because for the first time in years it felt like something had been returned to me, something I never thought I'd get back. Not revenge, not justice, but connection. We stayed out there until the sun cleared the horizon and the town began to wake. And as the light hit his face, I realized the most surprising truth of all. I hadn't come back to ruin her world. I'd come back to rebuild mine. Chapter 4.